Models getting remade is the bread and butter of Warhammer 40k, and today we're going to cover 10 that I think should be remade for one reason or another that I will cover in their various segments. First up, we have a classic Dark Eldar character that I'm sure you all expected, Lilith Hesperax. She got her new model in 2021 and went from looking like a lithe, agile, acrobatic assassin to a very large, strange, growling monster, really. Her face went from stoic and calm, which fits with her character, to something far more generic. And while I do love insane hair, like Super Saiyan 3 is my favorite Super Saiyan form, I just really do not like this hair. I think it looks ridiculous. The pose is just not quite as fitting for a quiet and somewhat patient for a Drukhari character. Also, the face is just, as I mentioned, far more generic. She also has weirdly ginormous feet, which isn't really important, I just thought it was interesting to point out. The proportions here are very weird. She also has a very large head. This one's more of a pipe dream, and that's why she's at number 10, because, well, I don't think she's going to get an upgrade, even though I think she looks very out of place alongside other Dark Eldar, just given her very strange bulk and overall size. Moving on to number 9, we have a classic model, the Chaos Sorcerer from 1996. Now, when I think Chaos Sorcerer, this is the guy I think of. That very interesting, sort of animalistic skull helmet with the big crest, the dragon mouth power pack, the power sword, or rather, force sword, if you will. All of these things come together to make a classic model that was sold for a very long time and comes back on made to order on a semi-frequent basis. Personally, I think the current Sorcerer model is just very boring compared to this guy, and I'd much prefer to see him replaced with something that pays homage to this classic model, who also starred in video games like Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2, which really cemented his place as an iconic model for Warhammer and the Chaos Space Marines in general. He's of course very old, and while the new Chaos Sorcerer isn't, I'm still holding out hope that eventually he gets an update into something that just feels a lot cooler than his relatively plain self. Moving on to number 8, we're dipping back into the realm of the Xenos, with my personal favorite Xenos species, the Orcs. This is the Defrola Battle Fortress from 2002, the same year I was born. A Forge World kit, this is a super heavy transport and gun wagon for the Orcs that I'd really like to see a modern interpretation of. They don't really have anything like this. I suppose the Battle Wagon is the closest, but even then, that is supposed to be significantly smaller. This has far more guns and bigger transport capacity. I really like the rolling fortress type look, and tracked vehicles are just cool in general. I'd really like to see this get an update, with plenty of options for its guns and stuff like that, fittingly very orky, and just make it a really tough and big thing for the Orcs, which I think they're lacking in terms of wheeled vehicles. While the Hunter rig, for example, is very cool, I don't think it scratches quite the same itch as something like this does, at least in my personal opinion. Also, it's, same year I came out, so I'm a little bit biased, but whatever. Completely irrelevant to what I'm saying. Anyways, on to number 7, we're double dipping back into Chaos again, but going down the God-specific route, we have something from the Death Guard. This was the Death Guard Terminator's upgrade sprue, as you can see here, sold from Forge World back in 2009. Personally, I just really like this look compared to things like the Blight Lord or the Death Shroud Terminators. I'm sure I'm in the minority there, but I think this just looks a lot cooler, mainly because it's just jacking Typhus's style, and Typhus looks really cool, so I don't really have a problem with that. And again, I don't think this one is going to ever come to fruition, but I'm going to hold out hope, because I think it looks really cool, and I would love to get a kit like this, or maybe just find a way to get this classic kit. Most of the Chaos Gods had their own Terminators, so I wouldn't mind trying to get some of them. Also, these guys are surprisingly recent. The Death Guard had a very good run in the late 2000s of just really solid models that I much prefer to their modern ones, for the most part. Anyways, moving on to number 6, we're going into our first Imperial entrant on the list, and it is a classic faction that has not seen any love in a very, very long time. That is, of course, the Vestroyan Firstborns of the Imperial Guard, first released in 2006. Out of all the remaining metal regiments, these guys, of course, are my personal favorite. I think they look the most unique with their big Russian hats. Don't remember the proper name, Ushanka? Perhaps. Their wooden furnitured guns, their overall steampunk aesthetic is just really cool. They've seen no real releases past 2006, and I'd really like to see them get a kill team treatment and then a full wave release, i.e. the Death Corps. Overall, I think these guys are just really, really cool, and I'd love to have some in my army because, again, they just look sick. They also have really cool lore. This guy, as you can see here, is equipped with a flamer, which has wood furniture, which is just pretty metal, because why would you put flame thrower into wood? Style points, that's why. And that's where the Vestroyans excel, in style points. Here's hoping they get a kill team release sometime in the near future. Moving on to number 5 on our list, we have our second sort of Imperial entrant, the Damned Legionaries, or rather just Legion of the Damned in general. These models came out in 2010, though they did have an earlier release wave. These guys would of course be Space Marines, but I think they would be more fitting as a sort of Imperial Agents type unit that anyone could take, as a fast-moving, presumably very tough with fancy bolters unit that can jump around the board. I'd also just like to see these models get updated. As well, these models look quite good, especially for 2010s, which had some pretty mediocre models, like the Sanguinary Guard. I think these guys could certainly do with an update. While I do like the hot rod aesthetic, I think it would be cool to add more ethereal fire like we see in the background artwork here. And of course, the Damned Legionaries are just a really cool faction that I would like to see get more models. How exactly they would get them, I'm not entirely sure, because Damned Legionaries and Kill Team doesn't really make any sense, and I'm not sure how else they would get a release. Unless there's just a big release wave for them and they become their own army, which I think would be a little bit lame, as I think they're better served as an ally force. Moving on to number 4, we have something from a new army. The Emperor's Children had this Dreadnought released by Forge World in 2004. This is, of course, a Dreadnought equipped with an absolute cannonade of sonic weaponry, which is, of course, really, really cool. And I'd say if this doesn't come to the Emperor's Children at some point, they are simply doing it wrong. This model, of course, is looking a little bit on the silly side, not unfitting for the time it came out in, but, of course, the giant Blastmasters and the big Doom Siren on its top give it a very cool aesthetic in general, and this just seems like a very obvious second-wave release if they want to give the Emperor's Children their own Demon Engine, which they absolutely should get. This is perfect, or maybe some sort of Sonic Tank could also be an interesting one, but we're talking on model remakes, not necessarily model wish list, which is another video I should probably do. Moving on to number 3, we're going all the way back to the Eldar with a classic kit that was never really that good to begin with. The Autarch Skyrunner came out in 2007 and of course was for the Eldar. Released in, I believe, metal or hybrid, this model just never really looked good. His face is rather uninspiring and kind of ugly. He doesn't have anything that unique to him, aside from his back banner. His jet bike is looking very, very droopy, and he just looks rather dumpy compared to the Wind Riders he would usually be leading, and especially the new Shining Spears, which he could be leading if he was still around. This guy definitely needs a good update, as the Autarchs got really good updates in the last Eldar release wave, so I think it's time for the last variant of the Autarch to come join them in the 21st century. Well, for the second time. This guy didn't release in the 90s, so that joke doesn't really apply to him. I could have gone for the obvious one, Karandras, but I thought that was too obvious. That's why a lot of these things are here. I wanted to go for models you don't see talked about quite as often. At number 2, we have a Tau classic, the Broadside. Of course, the Broadside's got a revamp in 6th edition that locked them to one weapon, and while this design has sort of been co-opted by the Storm Surge in ways, I think this design should make a comeback, as almost a Broadside captain maybe, or rather commander, since he has all of the weapons a Broadside can reasonably take, and just looks really, really cool. He's looking a bit static, but get this guy a guns blazing stance and you would have an absolute banger of a model and a leader for the Broadsides. Broadsides have always looked cool, so why not give them more options? I think this is just a very metal look, and the excessive guns I think would be very fitting for a commander, especially since they seemed to want to go down the specialized route for the Broadsides normally. Why not let the commander have best of both worlds? Or they could just release this as an even larger Broadside. Maybe a Riptide-sized Broadside type battlesuit could be very cool. Just bring this back. Shoulder-mounted guns are really cool, even if they're completely impractical. Moving on to number 1.
Oh my goodness!
This is Gabriel Angelos, released in 2016, though he has more in common with Pinhead Larry than Gabriel Angelos. From those gorilla fisted hands to one of the most horrifying faces Warhammer has ever seen, this model is a just disgrace to a wonderful character in Gabriel Angelos. Especially with Dawn of War getting its definitive edition, I'd rather this not be the only official Blood Raven model we ever get. Please, Games Workshop, do Gabriel Angelos a service here and release a better model of him, and also in his more iconic look. Dawn of War 3 doesn't exist, so I'm not sure where they got this design from anyways. He's certainly not doing any backflips in this armor. In fact, this guy is such a bad model, he didn't even get a move to Legends when the model released alongside him, Carib Colon the Risen, did get moved to Legends. This model is hideous and needs an update. I've been Spoons Rattling, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.